Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Diablo 3 Build Factory. My name is Phobos, and today's topic will be on how to equip your Demon Hunter for Inferno difficulty. Footage in the background is Act 2 and Act 3 on Inferno, and I really have to say, on Act 3 Inferno, shit gets real. It's really difficult and a whole nother level compared to Act 2. So if you're stuck on Act 2 Inferno at the moment, believe me, it gets really more difficult. It's really impressive what Blizzard, or how Blizzard increased the difficulty levels on Inferno difficulty. So this is a really difficult topic to talk about because my equipment at the moment is okay for Act 3. I can fight there, that's no problem, and the main issue is the champion packs as always, because the difficulty comparison between Act 1 and 2 was pretty significant, but between Act 2 and 3 that's a whole nother level. You can really believe me, it's insane how tough champion packs get. They sometimes have an HP level like 11 million, and that's way more than bosses, for instance, like the Butcher or Belial have. Of course, the champion packs scale with how many players are in the game, but still, champion packs are really tough on Act 3. They are much more tougher than in the acts before. Who would have guessed that? But what I want to say by this is, my gear isn't the ultimate gear, and you have to acquire better gear than I already have when you're in Act 3 at the moment. So I just wanted to point that out before getting into details. Okay, first off, I hope you know how the base stats work in Diablo 3. If you don't know how they work, I will link you to a video of Creparian. He really did a nice job explaining how every stat, namely strength, dexterity, intellect and vitality work in the game. So if you don't know how these different stats relate to each other, please make sure to look up this video first and then come back to this video here. Another thing I want to talk about is my playstyle philosophy. A lot of people might not agree with me and they have other views on how to play a Demon Hunter, but that's my opinion and that's my philosophy. When it doesn't apply with your philosophy on how to play a Demon Hunter, that's completely fine. I just want to mention that this is my opinion, and if it doesn't work for you, you will have to figure this out by yourself, sorry. But this is how I do it, and I hope it will help you in the long run. Before we talk about stats and which of these are most important to the Demon Hunter, I want you to keep in mind that there are basically two pinnacles for Inferno difficulty, and these pinnacles apply to every class on Diablo 3. So basically the first pinnacle is survivability. You want to have gear which ensures your survivability in the game, because if you don't stay alive, how do you do damage? Or how do you help your group? Or how do you get through the game? Quite obvious, isn't it? And the second pinnacle is that you want to have gear which ensures that you do an appropriate amount of damage on your act. Because some weapons are appropriate for, let's say, Act 1, but they might not be appropriate anymore for Act 2. So you want to have an eye on that and upgrade your weapons according to your acts, because the monsters get so much tougher from act to act, and you can't rely on one weapon through the entire game, unless it's like a 1200 DPS weapon. That's something different. Okay, the first and most important stat about the Demon Hunter is dexterity. There's no doubt about that. Because not only does dexterity increase your damage, it also increases your dodge rating. And dodge rating is something I want to talk about in a little more detail now. If you remember my words in the first episode, don't get hit at all. Then you will remember that I said use smokescreen to get out of harm's way, and which is true. You should use smokescreen to a great extent and try to avoid incoming damage as much as possible, but sometimes you get into situations where you can't avoid getting a hit. Sometimes that just happens. For instance, Act 2, when you're fighting these weird vipers of Belial, they are invisible, and while they are invisible, you can't hit them. Sometimes you can't even really see them, and when they break out of their cloak, they will hit you. They will almost instantly hit you, and sometimes it's just not possible for you to smokescreen in time. So therefore it's really nice to have a high dodge rating, and I'm currently at like 35% dodge rating. Doesn't seem that much at first, but you won't believe how many attacks I actually dodge. It's really amazing. And in fact, you have to keep in mind that I can dodge every attack in the game. That includes piles of venom on the floor, or mortar shells, or really any kind of incoming damage. Also like firebolts or melee attacks. They are all dodgeable, so that's something you have to keep in mind. Of course, you must not rely on dodge rating only, because there are times when you will get a hit, and dodge rating doesn't prevent you from getting one-shotted. And this is the next topic I want to talk about, and there are already different opinions on that on the internet, but this is how I do it, and this is how I have a lot of success in Inferno difficulty. The second most important stat to me is vitality, because if you have a certain amount of health, you can avoid getting one-shotted, and that's something I view as most important, because on Inferno difficulty most of the time I have like either full HP or I'm almost dead, and almost dead is not dead. That's quite obvious, but what I mean by this is, if you are almost dead, you can use a defensive skill, you can use a health pot, or you can use preparation with battle scars. So there's so many ways to keep yourselves alive, and that's most important. You want to have a lot of HP in Inferno difficulty, and you don't want to get one-shotted. Of course, that doesn't mean that you can run through Inferno having like the most crappiest armor rating or resistances and a lot of HP. You will get one-shotted anyways. What I mean by having a lot of HP and a lot of vitality is you want to have appropriate gear with vitality. I don't want you to run around on Inferno having like level 30 gear and like a 200 vitality item. That really sucks. Of course, if you have like an amulet or rings which are level 30 and happen to have a lot of vitality and a lot of dexterity on them, use them. That's completely fine. But don't use chest armor with a lot of vitality or with a lot of dexterity, which is like level 45. That's way too less armor on them. Speaking of armor, armor is also really important, because armor reduces any incoming damage. It really doesn't matter whether it is magic damage or melee damage or fire damage, or it really doesn't matter, it decreases all of them. So you want to increase your armor rating as soon as possible. Of course, you can't neglect your dexterity and vitality first, but as soon as you have a lot of vitality and dexterity, you want to take a hard look on your armor rating and increase that as soon as possible. After you've taken care of these stats, you can take a harder look on more damage orientated stats, such as critical hit damage, for instance. If you decide to go with critical hit damage, I would recommend using Sharpshooter as a passive skill, because Sharpshooter will increase your critical hit chance, and with a high critical hit damage output, you can really increase your overall damage to a high margin. Now I guess you guys want to hear benchmarks, like how much DPS do I have to have starting Inferno, or how much HP do I have to have coming from Hell. And this is something really difficult to talk about, because everyone has different equipment setups, everyone has different builds or different playstyles, so I will try to speak from experience, but these experience might not apply to your experiences, and if they not, don't worry, you will figure this out by yourself. I'm pretty sure about that. Now, speaking from experience, when people first enter Inferno difficulty, they are most probably not prepared. When I first entered Inferno difficulty, or when our group first entered Inferno difficulty, we got our asses handed to us. Our gear was way too crappy, and we wiped like 1 hour on the first champion pack. It was insane. But after a while, you will receive better gear and you will adapt to the more difficult champion packs. So what I'd say is, as a demon hunter entering Inferno difficulty, you want to have at least about 10,000 DPS, and you want to have at least about 20,000 HP, and that's absolute low end. Actually, you will need a lot of damage and a lot of vitality, and you should try to increase that as fast as possible. But the main issue is, how do you do that? And that's something I also want to talk about real quick. Of course, entering Inferno, a lot of people say if you can't compete in Inferno, then you should go back to Hell and farm the bosses there or farm champion packs, because as soon as you hit level 60 you will receive Nephilim Valor and can also farm in Hell. That's completely fine. If you really can't get a grip on Inferno difficulty, try that first. But from experience, I'd say that the most important gear or the best gear drops on Inferno difficulty, and that's obviously the case because most of the gear that you see on the auction house at the moment is from Inferno difficulty. So you should try to get through Inferno difficulty and, well, just slam your head against the wall. Just try to do your best, and if you have a lot of gold left, you can also try to buy like a weapon that is more appropriate for Inferno difficulty. So let's say you go to the auction house and there are obviously weapons with sometimes over 1000 DPS and people charge horrendous prices for them. But when you first enter Inferno difficulty, a weapon with like, let's say, about 600 DPS should be okay, and these weapons are sometimes on sale for about 75,000 gold. So if you can't get a grip on the Inferno difficulty or the champion packs, you should go and farm gold, maybe on Hell difficulty with 5 stacks of Nephilim Valor, and then you should go to the auction house and buy that weapon and then try to kill champion packs. That's something that a lot of my friends have done, and since then they never had issues again with Act 1 Inferno. Of course, you have to keep in mind that Inferno difficulty, unlike Hell or Nightmare, gets horrendously difficult from act to act. That's something, like I already mentioned, you have to keep in mind. You want to upgrade your gear as fast as possible as soon as you get into a new act. So let's say you're Act 1 and you say like, meh, it's so easy, I crush everything, it's no problem at all. Trust me, as soon as you hit Act 2 Inferno, you will get your ass handed to you. It's really, really, really more difficult than Act 1. It's way more difficult. Even the monsters itself have more abilities to make your life miserable. So don't underestimate Act 2 when you first get out of Act 1. Okay, since we are almost done for today, let's summarize all the facts once more. The first and most important stat for the Demon Hunter is Dexterity. After Dexterity, the most important will be Vitality, and after that you should focus on your armor rating. After you've taken care of this, you should take care of things like critical hit damage, for instance. Or you can also say, okay, I want even more protection, and then you can focus on resistances. Also, don't forget there's something like Magic Find, so if you want awesome items, try to rank up that as well. Now, equipping a character for Inferno difficulty is really difficult. Everyone struggles, including myself, so one last piece of advice that I can give you is that when you go to the auction house and you look up items for a demon hunter, for instance, look for dexterity and vitality on items. Let's say you want to have new shoulders with both dexterity and vitality. Type into the filters that you want a 100 dexterity and a 100 vitality on these shoulders. And as soon as something pops up with a non-6 digit buyout price, buy that instantly. It's a really good deal. But of course it has to be like at least level 58 or have an appropriate armor count. That's obvious. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Press the like button if you liked the video, and if you want to stay up to date for more episodes of the Diablo 3 Build Factory, make sure to subscribe. There's a lot of more stuff coming. Also for other characters, don't worry, it just takes a lot of time to level them up. And also don't forget to submit opinions and discussion topics for the Build Factory. Maybe we can implement them here as well when the time is right. So until then, I wish you a nice day and see ya!